This is Defacto Review, where we run down the top news events from the previous week, and then we debate what happens next. Hi, I'm Terrence Edwards, and I'm back from on assignment. And with us tonight is our host, Jargal Defacto.
Good evening.
How was your week, Jargal?
Well, quite busy with ASEM.
Yeah.
In particular, the second part. Also, before the summit, there was 2 days of ASEM Economic Forum, which I found one of the most important part of this ASEM events prior to the summit, which is mostly kind of concluding and the way the leaders meet. So that's why I spent quite 4 or 5 days of Nadam with that ASEM event.
Yeah, while most of the country was out on Nadam, me and Jargal, we were working. So yes, our program today will mostly focus on last week's Asia-Europe meeting. The Asia-Europe meeting, or ASEM, has closed this weekend in Ulaanbaatar after 2 days of talks between delegates from 53 countries. In attendance for the event on 15th and 16th of July were 12 presidents, 25 prime ministers, and 4,000 foreign delegates, right here in Ulaanbaatar. Over 7,000 journalists were in Ulaanbaatar covering the event.
700.
This weekend. Over 700, pardon. Over 700 journalists were in Ulaanbaatar covering this event this weekend amid a media storm of breaking news, including the appointment of Boris Johnson as Britain's next foreign minister. This is following the so-called Brexit events, as well as a truck attack in Nice, France that killed 84. Finally, there was an attempted coup in Istanbul by a military sect in Turkey that also killed 36. So with all these media events and so many foreign delegates, head of state in Mongolia, do you think those events overshadowed the actual Asia-Europe meeting being held in Mongolia?
Well, in a way, yes and no. Yes, because every morning we were waking up to this major event you had just described. First morning it was this Nice tragedy. Second, the Turkey attempted coup d'etat. And no, because it was kind of these two news were getting together through all these international channels. And I find it quite, in a way, it's enhanced how important is the dialogue among political leaders, society, business leaders, not only inside of the region, not only intra-region, but inter-region, like Europe and Asia.
Yeah, this globalization.
Yeah, because we have a lot of similarity of our challenges we face, and these challenges, take the Nice, take Turkish, all this together shows how much we to tackle together a lot of challenges we have, and how much fragile is our security and the democracy. So I think that's one of the reasons why every morning the ASEM delegates were giving particular attention. The first day that morning was the giving a minute of silence, respect to the victims of Nice, etc.
From my side, this was a continually changing event. We came in there, for my reporting, I came in there expecting to ask a lot of questions about the Brexit or the exit of Britain from the European Union. I also expected to talk about the South China Sea issue with China and the Philippines. The Hague Court actually ruled a decision that annulled or worked against China's claim to those seas. So Friday morning, when we got these events, everything changed, and all of a sudden it was all about Nice. And then Saturday, again, we woke up to this incredible news in Turkey, and suddenly all over again, there was a new topic, and we're discussing only Istanbul now. But what was important for Mongolia, I think, is the fact that the delegates were all here And all these news reports taking comments from Merkel, all the other heads of state, the foreign minister of France was in Mongolia at the time. All of this put more attention on ASEM as well, so that we really can't forget that. But this is, I think, a scale of an event that Mongolia has never seen before. Have you, in recent history, or really Mongolia's history, do you know of anything else that compares to ASEM?
You are right. It is this is the largest event probably we have ever organized in this country by many scales. And we have been preparing. This event has shown how much the country can do it if we are taking the same action in unity. We prepare on time, and it was a quite challenge for the country. However, we had a lot of will of the people, well organized. We had, say, 1,500 young volunteers from age 15 to 35 to apply to be a volunteer, and 1,100 of them were taken, and then half of them could speak English, and then all delegates language possibly, and they have been doing a marvelous job. You go all around in anywhere, and these young people will meet you and explain you very willingly. If they don't know, they will call you back, etc. And I think it was an effort of not only these volunteers who done a great job, but also everybody. Total 12,000 people were involved in this. Total 11 events, by the way, and 10 events within ASEM took places in Ulaanbaatar since May. Several. We should enhance this part also, because it is not only this summit, but also it was event like conference of the Directors General of Immigration and Management of Migratory Flows in May, and also there was a 4th ASEM Environment Ministers meeting in May also. Then there were very interesting another Asia-European event called Food Safety Issues and Renewable Energy Issues. Also there were People's Forum, Youth Forum, Parliamentarians meeting, Finance Ministers meeting, Senior Officials meeting, which were all preceding the events of Summit, where they have adopted Ulaanbaatar Declaration. ASEM usually, as is in informal structure, does not take any kind of this sort of declaration, but that in this case of Ulaanbaatar, they have again reconfirmed their willingness to continue this work, importance of this ASEM. And also there was a proposal to celebrate ASEM Day in the first week of March. I think ASEM is evolving organizations. The more they go, the more problems they have to discuss, because more countries officially involved. 53 countries are a lot. At this high level they have committed. They have a summit, and for some countries it's one of the only possible, probably this kind of big integration of political will. And you have been mentioning about South China issues, the island issues.
South China Sea, yeah.
Yes, South China Sea issues, which somehow have not been, I think, at all levels discussed. But however, I think this President of Vietnam, Prime Minister of China had bilateral meeting. There are several bilateral meetings during the ASEM Summit, which I think is a good steps towards solving many problems that these countries have, because ASEM is about meeting each other, talking to each other, discussing the issues. And here and there, it was happening in a formal, not formal way, but anyway, there were several multilateral and bilateral meetings.
As far as the South China Sea goes, it was a fortuity of timing. The Hague Court made a decision to allow Philippine fishermen to fish those seas on Tuesday, and then right then on Friday, we have China's Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of the Philippines in the same country, ready to talk, as well as a lot of other countries concerned with the freedom of the seas there.
So this kind of things, because the nature of the informality of this ASEM meeting, and I understand with these current events I just now described, about 10 events, it will be more and more next time, because then more and more dialogue we need across all level of society.
Yeah.
So I think it was an important event for strengthening this Asia-Europe cooperation.
Yeah, the ties between those countries. And you talked a little bit about the challenges of hosting such an event. What comes to mind is security. Can you expand on, we've had a lot of months leading up to this event. I think security has been a big issue for Mongolia. So can you talk a little bit about that and any other challenges Mongolia might have faced along the way?
Well, because it is, as we talked, the largest international event we have organized, with so many head of delegations at this level, highest level of the state. Of course, we had to prepare a lot for that. First time Mongolians were able to, for example, to upgrade training for 14,400 people, according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs statement. We were able to update skills of 14,400 people, including 620 people for hotel management. We have trained 15 people in Korea in hotel management, and also there is a convention management. 50 people also trained abroad. We had also again retraining of translators, synchronic translators. 14 persons studied trained in India, and 6 persons also are being prepared also in other European countries. And we had a lot of volunteers. We have talked, and most importantly, as you have asked, security and the intelligence. Some 500 people were trained abroad, which is important part of our skills, learning skills, to make sure that we organize this sort of events in the future. So, but on the other hand, as you see, it was very tough security. It certainly was too tough, probably. In particular, Mongolian journalists were not completely happy about that, because for example, very few people were able to organize a personal interview or a little bit longer term, nice long interview with the heads of the states. So this sort of issues were there.
Yeah, I can certainly relate, as I was reporting on the scene as well. So I want to pivot our conversation just a bit and just look at the political side of this conference. Security from terrorism and freedom of the seas were 2 major points that appeared in a statement from the chairman on Saturday, which was released with the consent of all ASEM delegates. Europe and Asia formed ASEM and holds these summits to maintain peaceful and cooperative ties between Asia and Europe, with this year's event held under the slogan, 20 Years of ASEM, Partnership for the Future Through Connectivity. Included in the shared goals from the chairman's statement was the need to build policy around sustainable development goals, combating climate change, and the use of sustainable energy technology, as well as the recovery of the global economic outlook. Also released was the Ulaanbaatar Declaration, which highlighted the ASEM groups doubling in growth from 26 to 53 members, and the enhanced connectivity between Asia and Europe regions. So I think you had a lot of conversations with delegates, but particularly you had 3 of a more longer nature. Can you tell us who you spoke with and what you discussed?
Yeah, the idea you just now described about this political importance of this event, I think it was a great opportunity for meeting the leaders themselves today at this level, in particular in the current during these two events, had a good chance to meet each other and express their own opinions. But for Mongolians, we had 5 state visits during and after ASEM events. In particular, the high-level visit, official visit of South Korean president, and also Singapore Prime Minister, which by nature are important for the country. Otherwise, I think without ASEM it could be quite later on. And this is, I think, politically important as we see that. As I told you, many journalists tried, but I have been trying to arrange de facto my program interview with several head of states, and I was lucky to meet President Miloš Zeman of Czech Republic.
Okay.
In his, during ASEM, there's ASEM Villa, and every guest has own house, and I had a great, unique venue to have that interview in that house.
This was built at the Sky Resort particularly for this event.
Yes. And I also was able to interview Prime Minister of Finland, Juha Sipilä, very interesting, dynamic young Prime Minister who came flying his own. He was flying jet. I understand it's a rented jet.
He piloted his own jet here?
Yes, and he brought 7 or so delegates with him.
I hadn't heard
on
that
same, and he said it's his hobby. And I asked a lot of questions because Mongolians are very interested to learn about Finland, similar country, 5.5 million people, smaller land than Mongolia, but very dynamic. They have all economic competitiveness. We know Nokia, many things. We discussed it, in particular the issue of the healthcare system, the general coverage of medical insurance, etc. Very interesting interview. And the third interview was with the even younger head of the state, the Prime Minister of Estonia, who was the youngest leader among all visitors visiting to the country at ASEM. And he also was younger minister he was a Minister of Social Affairs of Estonia prior to that. He's the head of his political party who is in a ruling role in the country. Estonia is even smaller by population country, 1.5 million, twice less a country than Mongolia. Land is also small, but location, the policy, the way how they pay attention to education, how they pay attention to e-signature, e-society, e-governance is significant. I have traveled myself several times to the country, so I had a very interesting, I think a high content conversation with these 3 leaders, and all of them will be on my program Defacto after translating and putting subtitle in Mongolian, and they will and you will have a chance to see that interview in original soon. So these are 3 interviews I made. Relatively, I think I made the largest amount of interviews possibly during the ASEM.
The news definitely dominated the conversations being had during the event, but this is an event for discussing the political mechanics behind what goes on in the world. So what do you think were the main issues discussed by delegates during those 2 days?
Well, it was expressed in Ulaanbaatar Declaration, separate statements, at the end in particular when Donald Tusk and Mr. Juncker and our president made a press conference and concluded the events. They have briefly said about that, and I think it's officially available. It is officially available on the website. Important thing was also social media presence. Particularly very interesting, Russian Prime Minister Medvedev put his speech on the website shortly after the speech, and he put a lot of photos, also because his hobby is photography. And Prime Minister Singapore also was very active on social media, and some sites were visited by 1.4 million people watching that photos, and there's some video he put about Mongolia while he is visiting the country. In terms of political content, we don't know exactly. It was relatively closed for media. Only particular, I think, accredited leaders media were there. Otherwise, we're not allowed to go into all sessions. But overall, you and me have touched the issue of, for example, that the South China Sea issue, which was not discussed, but however, it was there was a good chance for bilateral meetings, as we have described it.
I think a lot of the individual members in their closing statements did mention South China Seas, but when it came to the chairman's statement, the only reference was security for maritime and freedom of the seas. So there was also a lot of talk about terrorism too, and there was that attack in Nice.
Yeah, which is a very current issue for many countries of Asia and Europe. The worry, I think, they were raised not at the ASEM, but from today, is that, for example, in France, the now mobilization of the activists, reservists in France, and the big, stronger increase of hatred among French people against the refugees, etc. And all. When I asked, for example, the President of Czech Republic, he said that he was against the quota of immigrants to European countries. And Czech is not receiving immigration, refugees, for example. So I think my general feeling was now the leaders are looking at the root of the issues, how can solve these issues at the beginning. And I think, personally, I think we should go down to that directions. When we talk about refugees, migrants, we talk about symptoms. But what is behind, what is the source? I think that source is still lack of conversations, lack of confidence, trust among people of different religion, different country, different economic conditions. So I think the world has to do a lot in that sense, in particular at the people's level, public diplomacy level. And I thought during all this ASEM events and preparation, I thought how much we still to go the world towards understanding each other more. And the sort of events like ASEM is important because at least at that level people talk. Now we have a People's Forum, Parliamentarians Forum, now Youth Forum in particular in Mongolia, People's Forum. All this, I think, playing the important role in the better direction of the world.
Yeah. We're going to move our conversation over once again, this time to focus on the economic impacts of this Asia-Europe meeting. One hope is that the event, ASEM, will direct more attention to Mongolia as an investment destination. ASEM countries account for 60% of global GDP, so building inroads for trade and investment during this event was crucial for Mongolia. The day before ASEM officially kicked off, China and Mongolia signed documents for debt forgiveness and lending for the construction of infrastructure. That was with the Prime Minister of China in town. So do you think this summit can actually translate into investment for Mongolia later down the road?
Yeah, I should say again that during this ASEM meeting there were 5 official visits of 5 leaders. One of them is Chinese leader, and that part was kind of a bilateral agreement between China and Mongolia. And there were several issues we have discussed, hopefully very positively it will impact on our economy. Yes, undoubtedly we expect it is good promotion of Mongolia as investment destinations, but however, promotion is one thing, but stability, political stability and the policy stability, in particular the good governance, not only for the foreign investment, for business in general, are important ingredients of attracting foreign direct investment to Mongolia. And I think Mongolia is coming into that to the growing awareness of that importance more and more. And as we know, the ASEM is happening just after new prime minister is nominated, but he had all acting ministers, and these days we expect new cabinets to be formed. And I think they will continue on this wave of attracting more foreign investment. And also it was a good promotion of Mongolia, economically speaking, as a tourism destination. And also it had shown that Mongolia can organize large-scale, several thousand people convention and conferences in Mongolia. And we had luckily get trained several, as we have talked to experts on this in this regard. But in terms of money, foreign minister explained, gave a press conference, and he said that not much budget money was given in the previous 2 years, 14, 15, but in the year 2016, they have put in 21 billion tugriks, about $10 million in the budget only. Also, during this ASEM event, as you have said, it's about 5,000 people were coming to Mongolia, not only at these 4 days, but before altogether, I think even more. But altogether, they expected this to be about $10 million tourism product sales, including accommodation, food, whatever, around 10 billion. So it's kind of equal, right? Mm-hmm. But however, we should also, we do expect a very clear-cut report on the budget of this large event too. As far as I know, for example, we had 150 billion tugrik, or it's about 70 or 80 million US dollar soft loan was given from Chinggis Khan bond proceeds to 44 hotels.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about that, just hotels, soft loan. They have received discounted loan, which we have to pay anyway as a country. So I think in general, the cost-wise, it is way high, not only just state budget, 10 million US dollar, but it is overall it's a much bigger cost. But however, having in mind these tourism, other future benefits, this country will have more benefit from that event. But however, up to now, the proper budget report, we do expect a civic society in the country, and I think the next government will do it. And of course, we should have also third-party auditing of this report. Then we will be very clear what was the current cost, what is the future income we do expect.
Yeah. And very quickly, those accords signed with China, I believe it's about $18.8 million of debt forgiven by China, and about 500 million that will go straight to Mongolia's infrastructure, including the new international airport that's being built at Hoshik Valley. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, but unfortunately we're all out of time for today, so we're going to have to say goodnight to our audience.
Yeah, thank you very much first for listening to us, and we will with Terrorism trying to make an independent analysis every week. And this event was, this week was full of all ASEM-related events, so that's why we have concentrate only on the ASEM things. Of course, now we do expect formation of new government, they say, from tomorrow.
Yes.
So for
under Erdinbat.
Yeah, and we will be able to more update about another interesting events next week, in a week from now. Thank you very much for watching us. Defacto review. We will be now running on Sunday at 9 o'clock p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, all, Ambatar.
Bye-bye.